to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with Johnny Sobchak for a spicy episode. Challengers is here, the Zendaya love triangle movie. Johnny, how are we feeling heading into this episode here?
Feeling great. I'm feeling rejuvenated. I'm feeling like cinema is alive again. Not that it hasn't been alive, but it's just been a little bit of a down period, I guess, over the last, month and a half or so after the hype of like Dune Part 2 died down a little bit. There's been cool smaller releases here and there, but in terms of like box office and everything, outside of Godzilla versus Kong, like it's been pretty quiet. So, but we're getting to an exciting time of the year. It's kind of like spring is, reaching its peak, and then summer is right kind of around the corner. So that's going to bring some big movies. And Challengers is not a blockbuster necessarily or a big budget movie, but it's got all the energy of one, if not more than any action movie you would see this summer. So I'm really excited to talk about that movie. I'm glad that we seem to be pretty much on the same page here, but lots to catch up on, lots to look forward to. So should be a good episode.
For sure. Yeah, this one, I know we didn't pod last week or to talk about Civil War. I know we both saw that one. Different feelings on that one, but still, just that's been a big hit for A24. You're talking about spring having sprung and getting into summer season. Like that's been a hit. People have been going to see that. We've got Challengers right now, and then May is right around the corner. We're gonna have The Fall Guy, The Idea of You, for anyone who's into the Anne Hathaway / Harry Styles inspired movie. But Fall Guy, Apes right around the corner. It's going to be a good couple weeks. Furiosa at the end of the month, so love to see it. But today is all about Challengers. That's what we'll be breaking down. Before we dive into it all, make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeart, YouTube, anywhere you can find a podcast. We are there. And be sure to subscribe to the Rewind newsletter so you can get all of our stuff sent straight to your inbox. Johnny, it's been, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks since our last podcast. What's been going on? Anything in the world of Johnny other than movies and TV before we get into what we're watching?
No, it's been pretty chill on my end. Just been kind of grinding with work and trying to enjoy the weather a little bit for what I can, apart from my allergies. So no, it's been chill, just been hanging out with the family and whatnot. Like I said, I have been spending a little bit more time at the theater than maybe the prior few weeks or months before that. So it's been good. I feel like we're getting a steady stream of stuff.
Love that. The allergies, I think I'm past like the worst part of it. So
Definitely. Thank you.
we're getting in the clear zone here. But no, in addition to movies ramping up and like you said, the weather getting nicer, that means outdoor concerts are back. Huge for me. So big couple weeks for live music in my world. Last week got to see our King Hosier down at High Water Fest in Charleston. Amazing. That was the third time that I've seen him. So
Awesome.
It was so great to see him. It was so sad though, because it was just like pouring rain all day long, and it finally ended before his set, so that was nice. But everybody was so waterlogged and soggy, but he made it worthwhile. Got to hear Too Sweet. It was the second time ever he'd performed it live. He'd done it the night before in Raleigh. So still North Carolina strong to get the first ever rendition of it. But It was a good time. And then this weekend in Charlotte, I'm very skeptical. So I'm going on the record as saying I don't know how this is going to turn out. Um, but it's called the Love and Life Music Festival. It's the first year of this new festival in Charlotte. It's happening uptown, and who knows how it's going to go. There's been a whole lot of messy stuff around it of like,
Oh boy.
whether like the way they were releasing the lineup and like people not knowing, and you can't like refund your tickets, and then
Oh god.
they weren't going to provide like free water for people, and everybody's like,
Okay.
it's May in the South, like it's going to be hot, people are going to need water. Then
That's
they finally caved in on that front. So there will be water, but as far
okay.
as performances go, it's headlined by Post Malone, Noah Kahan, and Stevie Nicks. So that's pretty big stuff. Maggie Rogers is going to be there. I'm very fired up for the Fray, major throwback
Oh
there.
wow.
I will ascend into the heavens when I hear How to Save a Life live. So
Icon.
I'll report back next week after the festival and let you know how it turned out, if it
Yeah.
was a scam or the real deal.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, I'm definitely very curious to hear how it goes. I'm hoping for the best for you. Godspeed. Hopefully it's a good time, not a
I mean,
cluster.
like
Never know.
obviously, I want it to be as successful as possible because that's huge. If we can like put Charlotte on the map with like a big time music festival like, right in the city, so I can not have to go to Chicago for Lollapalooza or to ACL in Austin, but instead just like
Yeah.
sleep at home and go see a festival during the day. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed that it can turn into something cool here.
Yeah. I mean, they do a good job, I feel like, in Charlotte of it just in general, obviously, with a lot of, artists, they always seem to make the effort to show up in Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte's got good venues for indoors, outdoors. So
Hmm.
uh, yeah, hopefully this will add a little bit of extra spice to the music scene, I suppose. Obviously, I am not going this year, but if they did have something consistent going and I was around in the future, I would definitely be interested in that. So fingers crossed. But that's exciting. I know um, I'm definitely in like the concert mood, or like I'm itching to go to a concert. I think the last concert I went to was Travis Scott. Um,
Mm.
last I think October. So I'm definitely looking forward. I do have tickets to see in June. I believe tickets to see Maggie Rogers and Japanese House in Raleigh. So,
Hell yeah.
and that's outdoors. Obviously, it'll be the middle of summer, so I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully, that'll be a good time.
I'm fired up for Maggie because I've seen her before, but obviously this new album just came out, so excited
For sure.
to have like the fresh songs to when I saw her last time, she had played Don't Forget Me and
Mhm.
The Kill, I think, like two of the songs off the new album, but then it was like a whole year before the album actually came out. So now it'll be nice like know those songs and be able to sing along.
Definitely.
Um
I'm a big fan of the Japanese House too. Like honestly, just as much, if not more, than Maggie. So that's like 2 for 1 for me. So I'm really excited about that.
The biggest concert news, though, I forgot to mention this a while ago, was that I did in fact secure tickets to Hans Zimmer in Raleigh.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not until September, so we've got plenty of time to brush up on all of my favorite scores between now and then. But
Yeah.
that's been a
No
bucket
problem.
list item for me to be able to get to see him and hear all that live, hear Dune, Interstellar, Pirates of the Caribbean, all these classics.
He's
I
got hit.
know the man doesn't miss. So I remember I told you like outside of Taylor Swift, like now that I had seen her, that's like my new top priority
Number one.
artist. So it's nice to have him back in the States for a North American tour. So
Yeah.
I
He was
will be
smart.
looking forward to that for a while.
He was smart to wait until like kind of with the hype of noon to announce that. I think that'll definitely get people flocking even more. And I was on the edge of maybe getting tickets for it, but it's so far out. I was like, can I really commit and like know for sure that I'm gonna go? So we'll see what
Mhm.
happens. Maybe I'll catch him during the tour though if I decide later. But that will be very exciting. I've never seen like a live like concert, at least
Orchestral sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah, at least for a composer. I mean, maybe when I was a kid, I went to like a symphony or something, but um, yeah, that's really exciting. Definitely different from the festival vibe, that's for sure.
Well, Hans Zimmer has been at Coachella before, so You never know. Maybe he'll have a surprise performance at Love and Life in Charlotte.
Don't
But
bang.
let's get off the music topic into what the people came for, TV and movies. I'm still, as far as the last couple weeks go, I am still on my Survivor grind. I promise I'll get out of this and watch some real TV. No offense to Survivor, but some real TV here soon. Rebecca and I, as I have mentioned, she's finally hooked on Survivor, so we've been rewatching some classic seasons.
Mm.
And we have one episode left in the current season that we're watching, and I made an agreement that we will take a break after this one to catch up on some new shows because I am falling dramatically behind. I still need to finish Three Body Problem. I need to watch Fallout, Shogun. I want to start Under the Bridge, which is new on Hulu. That's the Lily Gladstone and Riley Keough. So like,
Yeah.
that sounds, it's like a true crime murder mystery sort of thing. So it's supposed to be, it's gotten very good reviews. So all of those shows, I'm like, I just need to take a weekend and just like binge for the entire time. But what's been on the TV for you, Johnny?
Yeah, I've been kind of fluctuating. It's been a weird period the last couple of weeks because I've been kind of like slowly but surely trying to get through some stuff. I'm trying to kind of like hold myself back from watching too much too soon, like really not binging, I guess, because I have that a little bit more lately. But so Fallout, I've gone through the first like half of the season or so. I think I'm like 4 episodes in. I think there's 10 total. Really enjoying Fallout. I think it's even better than I expected. I think a lot of people feel that way. I was expecting it to be good, but I think it is like on the verge of great. And so I'm sure and it sounds like it'll get even better in the back half. So really enjoying that. Really recommend that if you haven't seen already. That's the one thing with that, talking about binging. A lot of people have said this already. I'm thinking for season 2, which has already been confirmed that they'll go to this, but I'm just imagining how much more hype and how much more conversation would have been flowing around this show if they had done a weekly release or maybe 2 episodes to start, or 2 in the back or something like that, and just build it up over the course of a couple months because people really do like it. And there's been a good amount of talk about it, but it feel like it just really like came and peaked.
Wasn't
really
that like a last minute change? Like, wasn't it supposed to be
I don't know if there
weekly?
was
And
a
then they
change. I think maybe it was, or maybe it was announced like late on or something. But yeah, it definitely seemed a little strange. I assumed it would have been weekly, like The Boys, for example, or Invincible. It didn't really make sense. I didn't expect them to do that. So I'm just hoping going forward, I would like to, I think it'll help them build up, a bigger fan base. And I think it'll just be more fun to discuss it, obviously, if it's week to week, whenever that comes out, a year or 2 from now, most likely. But really like Fallout. And then you're talking about stuff we should watch or that you want to watch. Shogun is definitely top of that list. Watched the first episode when it came out like a couple months ago at this point. I really liked it. I got hooked, but it was something again where I just didn't want to rush through it. So I'm kind of being hypocritical because I'm like, oh, I want to do the weekly release drop, and then I chose to
don't
wait
watch a weekly release.
to watch Shogun kind of all at once, or at least a little bit closer together at the end now that it's all out. So it sounds like it stuck the landing. Sounds like it's pretty much a banger beginning to end. So when I do watch it, of course, I'll bring it up on the show and share my thoughts. But I'm really excited for that, and I think we're not too far away from some kind of shows that I'm looking forward to, like premiering.
House of the Dragon, a little hot D coming in June.
Yeah, May's right around the corner, and then June, yeah, we'll have The Boys and Bear supposedly.
Bear season 3. That's one that I'm still hoping that could go either way. I don't know if they've announced like which one, if it's going to be weekly or all at once, because season 1 was weekly, season 2 was all at once, and the show just has continuously gotten bigger. So
yeah,
who knows how that'll be handled? But maybe I'm trying to think. Maybe that would be Emmy related because the deadline is like mid-July, I think.
Yeah, could be.
So maybe they have to like get it all out in June beforehand for campaign purposes. But who's to say? On the movie side, obviously challengers. I mentioned Civil War. But I've really been prepping for the Apes movies. I've been rewatching them, which I feel like I've mentioned this before, that this is just like some weird fluke that happened in my life, is that I watched Rise and Dawn and loved them and never saw War, which I know is like the defining like cherry on top of that trilogy. So rewatched Rise, rewatched Dawn, still love them, still obsessed, and I'm finally gonna see it through and watch War before Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes comes out. So I know you had the hot take that might not be a hot take on Twitter, saying that that franchise or that trilogy, top to bottom, could be considered as better than the Dark Knight trilogy. And pending watching War, I think that I could get behind that.
Okay, okay. I appreciate the support. I feel like when I tweeted, it was just like some random thought I had like that morning at work. And I was like, I feel like I can go out on a limb here because I just seen a lot of people like talking about how much they love those movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm gonna sound like an old person or like nostalgia, but I grew up with the Dark Knight trilogy and I kind of grew up with the Apes trilogy in a way. Obviously a decent amount, older with the Apes movies, but I definitely have that kind of feeling for them. Like they really inspired like my love of film. And I think as in terms of blockbusters over the last, 10, 20 years, they're top tier in a lot of ways. So I'm glad they're getting some kind of residual love, even though the last movie came out, what was it, 7 years ago now?
17, I think. Yeah.
Which is like really hard to believe. But I'm hoping
I'm
that
pretty sure I saw Rise, or I'm pretty sure I saw Dawn at midnight. So that just makes this even more inexplicable as to how I missed War.
that is weird. Well, it's your defense, I guess. I'm not going to defend you because I think it's indefensible, but it was wedged in between, I believe, Spider-Man Homecoming and Dunkirk. So it was literally like back to back to back weeks that
Yep,
July.
that must have been what happened.
So you
That
maybe
that
you were
explains it
movie
all.
theatered out at that point. But believe it or not. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of those movies. So I'm glad my intention at least is to revisit and watch them all as well because it's been a few years. I really watched them a lot. I've seen War and Dawn, especially, I think maybe 7 or 8 times, if not more. I saw Dawn, I think, twice in theaters. I saw War maybe 2 or 3 times in theaters. So been holding off for a few years, but I will definitely get back into those. And Fury Road, I'm talking about Furiosa,
Mhm.
not too far away. Definitely plan to give that a rewatch. That's another one that I've watched a dozen times maybe, and just I've taken a few years from watching it to not lose the luster, and I'm looking forward to that because I just know that's one of my favorite movies. So
Have you seen the like original Mad Maxes, like the Mel Gibson ones?
so I
Because
haven't.
a couple years ago, when I guess it was maybe like 1 or 2 years ago, when they like released the Mad Max anthology 4K, and so
Yeah,
it's like Fury Road on 4K, but then also
the
Mad
original
Max
three.
and Thunderdome, and I think there's a third one, but I haven't seen any of those originals. So I'm curious, like, do I want to go back and watch all those in addition to
Yeah.
Fury Road before Furiosa comes
I
out?
don't think with those, I think in terms of just like in relation to Furiosa, you really don't need to watch those because they obviously Furiosa has no involvement with those
Right.
whatsoever. Obviously it's still in that world, so it could benefit, but even on its face, I've seen the second film, which is Road Warrior. The first one's just called Mad Max, the third one's Beyond Thunderdome. Um, Thunderdome, I think, is supposed to be the weakest out of the four. From my understanding, Road Warrior is kind of like a big jump in terms of action and like scale compared to the first movie. And I think that's pretty much that was considered to be like one of the best action movies, and probably still is to a lot of people before Fury Road came out. There's a big chase sequence towards the end of Road Warrior that pretty much served as inspiration for Fury Road. But Fury Road takes that idea and blows it up, to a $200 million movie, and the chase takes place over the entire length of the movie, basically. So Fury Road's kind of supplanted that. But I've only seen Road Warrior. I liked Road Warrior. I thought it was pretty great. But I have not. I do want to see the original one at some point. And Beyond Thunderdome, I'm not like super interested in watching, but I've heard it's like pretty good. So I'm sure the 4Ks are pretty decent as well. But yeah, for me, I'm not like a big Mad Max fan. I'm just a really
Hmm.
big lover of Fury Road, and I think that
Right.
in terms of Furiosa, I'm most concerned with that and whatever else they maybe do. I don't know what George Miller has planned after Furiosa, but maybe we'll get something else, a show or another movie. I would like to see it.
Who's to say? And then the final thing on my rewatch list was after watching Civil War, I needed a Jesse Plemons cleanse because his scene. I know we had differing opinions on the movie as a whole, but I think we were in unison that his scene was like nuts, where he just
Probably the
comes
best
in.
one. Yeah.
He comes in just like absolute heater and is totally disturbing and horrifying. And so
Yeah.
needed to cleanse that palate and rewatched Game Night. So
I
got
hear.
some iconic stuff there from him as the detective, and or not the detective, the police officer. How could that be profitable for Frito-Lay? Iconic scenes, just great
That'd be
humor.
profitable.
That's such a great movie that was underrated at the time because it came out in like this early spring. I want to say it was like
Around the
March.
same time as like, what was it, 2018?
Yeah, it was 2018. I want to say
It
it was
was in
like
the wake
March.
of Black Panther. So I think that really hurt it because everyone was watching Black Panther and like nothing else,
February,
basically.
yeah, February 23rd, 2018. So
Oh yeah.
right, literally like a week or two after.
Yeah.
Um, but no, that movie was so funny and deserves so much more love, and it just kind of got buried. So I'm glad that at least the like Jesse Plemons memes of that have lived on enough to like give this sort of a cult fandom of people who really
Yeah.
do appreciate the movie and go to bat for it online.
It's funny. All I'll say about that is I saw game night in theaters, thought it was amazing, loved it, raved about it. I'm pretty sure I have tweets up, I'm sure about it. And I have not watched it again since, which is kind of unusual for me because if I really like something, I'll tend to go back to it, show it to other people, what have you.
I think
But
it's time. I think it's time
yeah,
for a rewatch then, because
um,
it's got some like truly laugh out loud moments. Rachel McAdams is amazing. Billy Magnuson is hysterical. The
yep.
whole
The whole cast is
The
good.
whole Denzel plot line with Lamorne Morris and his girlfriend, like just absolutely ridiculous stuff.
Nah, it's great. I'll just say real quick before we kind of hop into our main topic for today. Again, I've been busy. I've been kind of dipping, diving into different things, but did see Civil War. We did have differing thoughts on that. I know you enjoyed it or thought it was better, more than I did. So maybe the less I say, the better about that one. I did see for the first Omen. I don't know if I commented on this in our last episode, but just all I'll say is I was very impressed by the first Omen. I thought that it was way better than I was expecting. I only saw it because of word of mouth. And the reviews were also pretty good, which I didn't really know about until it was in theaters. But I recommend people to go check it out. If you can still catch it in theaters, you definitely should. It's a really good looking movie with great sound. And if you check it out on demand or after it's on, streaming or something, I would definitely give it a look. The first horror movie to really bother me and like scare me in a like long time. I can't even remember what the last movie was prior to that. So high praise for that. And then in terms of rewatches, I did rewatch Wonka with my brother and his wife. They were looking for something kind of like happy and fun, and they missed it, even though I told them I really liked it back in like December. So they were wanting to watch it. It's on Max now, so we threw that on. Kind of was just like, okay, I liked it a lot. I thought it was pretty great. So I was like, I'll be curious to see what I think now that I know like what it is and like I'm going over it a second time. And I actually liked it just as much, if not more, like seeing it again. So
All
that
right,
one.
Club Chalamet.
I'm Club Chalamet. I am Club Wonka. Um, and that movie ended up being a huge hit, so that's pretty cool. And then The Abyss, I showed that to my buddy Clint. He had not seen it before. I got the 4K. The 4K is, I think, pretty exceptional. I would definitely recommend it. He liked it a lot. And I think that's like the second time in the last like couple months that I've shown that movie to someone, and I still get a kick out of it. Like every time, I think that's one of James Cameron's more underrated movies, if not his most underrated.
I still
So
haven't
again,
seen that, unfortunately, because
you
I
liked
was
it a lot.
planning to, I was planning to, when they did the theatrical re-release, was that like December?
Yes. Yeah, that
Um,
was a way back.
but it was literally that one night only, and it was at like 6 p.m. And
On a
I'm like,
Wednesday.
yeah, I couldn't make that work, but I need to check it out. Because it's definitely been on my list. So
Get to it.
get to it, man. I might, I'm getting kicked out of the house tonight because Rebecca's hosting book club. So I'm being
Wow.
banished around 7. So I'm trying to decide. Maybe you can help me right now, put me on the spot. Do I go see Abigail,
Ooh.
the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, or Alien 45th anniversary re-release? I've seen it before, Alien, but
When was the last time you saw Alien?
a couple years. I still haven't watched Aliens though, so maybe that's a good segue for me to go see this again and then finally watch
Check out
Aliens.
Alien. That's not a bad idea. I did see Alien in theaters like a few years ago. And I thought it was a fun, like worthwhile experience. So that might not be a bad idea.
I mean, it does seem like that's probably the best movie of the bunch.
Oh, I think it's safe to Hey, the classic masterpiece Alien is probably better than those other two movies you
How
named.
dare you?
Say it depends on
How dare
your
you besmirch Abigail like that?
it depends on your mood, Zach. I guess if you're looking for something more light and fun, then obviously the other two are going to be more, appealing. So it might be a game time decision on that one.
I wish I could just take my War for the Planet of the Apes and watch it there. Like have a movie theater play that for me. I'll have to book out like the private rental just to watch that. All right, let's get down to business. Challengers. Here we go. Colloquially known as the Zendaya love triangle movie, the Zendaya threesome movie, whatever you want to call it online. That is what people saw the trailer, and that is what got butts in seats. This whole love triangle, and I'll say it, hot movies are back. We just had whatever you think about the movie, but Anyone But You was a huge hit, rom-com, and great, amazing looking cast there
Is it a
with Glenn
sexy movie
Powell.
though?
I mean, like,
Or does it have sexy people in it?
I mean, I think that goes hand in hand.
Oh,
I said hot movie back. I didn't
Okay.
say sex. Like, look, it all comes back to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. By the way, I know we
Now that's a
talk about
hot
that
show.
movie a whole lot. That's a hot movie, a hot cast, and a sexy movie. So
That's fair. Okay.
but this checks both boxes. Challengers is a very sensual movie. You think it's about tennis? See, for example, Rebecca's mom, big tennis player, loves tennis. And we're like, don't go see this movie. It's not about tennis the way you think it is. It's not like you're going to see King Richard. But Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, and Mike Feist in the titular love triangle, not titular, but in our titular love triangle, currently at an 87% critic score, 76% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. And Johnny, I think you and I are both coming in hot here with a 4.5-star rating out of 5. For me, that ended up about an 85 out of 100. I'm just going based off your letterbox here. So if there's any more intricacies in your score, feel free.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely have the same rating as you on Letterboxd, definitely high on it. Personal score. I've just seen it last night, so I think I need to simmer on it some more. You saw it like what, 2 weeks ago at this
Yeah,
point?
this has been like two and a half weeks for me. So I'm gonna count on your freshness here.
Are you gonna be singing again, do you think, or no?
I think so. I still have a couple things, like I just mentioned those movies, not that they're like priorities to catch up on for Abigail and Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, but I'll probably go and see it before all this other stuff ramps up, hopefully.
I would say I'm right with you though in terms of like overall score. I'd say like mid 80s probably. I definitely this says something probably more than anything else I can say. I already got a ticket to see it again in Dolby. Before it goes out of those screens, I think this coming weekend. So I'll be seeing it again, I think Tuesday, most likely. And I really like fucking enjoyed this movie. I thought it was great, if not incredible or amazing, just overall. So I'm excited to like get more into it because we haven't really talked about it. You haven't really spoken too much on it because us, plebes had not seen it as of late. So this is there's a lot to digest and talk about for sure.
Absolutely. Let me lay down the plot here before we get too deep. Challengers stars Zendaya as Tashi Duncan, a former tennis prodigy turned coach and a force of nature who makes no apologies for her game on and off the court. Married to a champion on a losing streak, Mike Feist, Tashi's strategy for her husband's redemption takes a surprising turn when he must face off against the washed-up Patrick, Josh O'Connor, his former best friend and Tashi's former boyfriend. As their pasts and presents collide and tensions run high, Tashi must ask herself, what will it cost to win? So there's the stakes for your love triangle. I guess off the bat, you kind of touched on some of your overall feelings. I think for me, the biggest thing that stood out, well, obviously the trio stands out. All three of them are just absolutely fantastic. The chemistry all three ways within this trio is palpable. Like there's so much tension at every stage of this relationship, or these relationships. But I think the biggest thing for me was like the way that this movie jumps around, going from, as that plot synopsis just mentioned, like, oh, Tashi is a former tennis prodigy, but then we also get the like come up of them as teen prodigies that are like finding their footing and getting to know each other. Then we like jump to present day and the whole stakes of like the present day setting of this one tournament and what's happening. Always returning back to that, but then having these previous scenes where it's like the Atlanta tournament, I think, or like just going through like college and all these different times in the history of their relationships, which I think like that can be very hit or miss when you're jumping around timelines so dramatically. Because I feel like inevitably there's like one storyline or one time period that is more compelling than the others. But that absolutely was not the case here, because every single scene, every single piece of history in this relationship was so integral to like this finished product of what's happening in the present day that like there was no like, oh, let's get back to the modern tennis match rather than this historical like collegiate sequence. So I was like just gripped all the way through, regardless of when or what was taking place. So
Yeah.
for me, like that's like it's a tennis movie, it's a relationship drama, but it was still like edge of your seat thriller for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of describing it. It's almost like an erotic thriller in some ways, like in the
Mm-hmm.
guise of this, as you said, tennis movie or sports movie, which it is a sports movie. But it's just it's approached from such a different point of view, which I think really works in its favor. Because I know we have differences on this topic, but I am not, out of all the different genres, subgenres, whatever you want to call it, I'd say the sport movie is probably my least favorite, which is interesting because I grew up playing a bunch of different sports all through, college, and then I watch sports. I, enjoy sports just in general. So like I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's just overly done or like predictable is like the one thing I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoy it when they take in a sports story or a sport and then make it into something that it just isn't, which is like I said, like an erotic thriller basically about this love triangle. And Luca Guadagnino, I think that has been said in an interview that he is not actually a fan of tennis. Like he doesn't really care about tennis, which I think is really interesting, because he's so intimate in terms of how he presents tennis, like the different matches that we see throughout the movie, their training, things like that. Um, and I think I also saw someone else say that they felt like they could have made this with any sport, essentially, which I don't actually think I agree with. I think that tennis really offers a very specific
Mm-hmm.
uh, energy and just the way, we're talking about partners, right? And like rallying, back and forth. Like there's definitely something about that is inherently, you know, sensual almost. And there's actually a kind of like a monologue that Zendaya's character has earlier in the film.
Tennis is a relationship, like the
Exactly. Yeah.
it's it's not only like that angle of like the intimacy of it, but also like
Right.
the parallels of the sport and the relationship, and how it's always like you're not just like being athletic, you're strategizing, you're planning two steps ahead, you're figuring out like how to impose your will on the other person and like
Yeah.
get them in the position that you want. And that is so present with all three of these people, but specifically like Tashi and Josh. Like poor Art is just kind of like hopelessly devoted. Whereas Patrick and Tashi are more like scheming and cutthroat. But
Yeah.
it's so much of the like the back and forth and that you see on the court of like they're always trying to get the upper hand, and there is no like, oh, romance for the sake of love and romance. It's always like, how can this better serve me or better my career or help me out moving forward, not just like Art is just like, tell me you'll still love me if I lose, and that's
Yeah.
not possible for the other two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's It's interesting because I'll be curious. So for me coming into this movie, like of course I knew the concept, I knew the people involved in front of behind the camera. Was really excited, like just interested based off that alone. I think I saw that first teaser, which I think had the Rihanna song on it.
Hmm.
It was S&M. And then after that, I was kind of like, okay, I don't really want to see. And I don't know if I even watched that whole trailer, but I just didn't want to know too much. Like I wanted to go in kind of to be surprised just by how the movie was presenting, this story and the different like intricacies of it. As you said, there's a lot of timeline jumping. It's definitely non-linear, like to the fullest extent. Um, and it's all really cleverly handled. And I was really like, I found myself being surprised pretty consistently in terms of how it was weaving kind of back and forth. And you think you kind of have a character figured out or a particularly dynamic figured out, maybe. And then it just completely like flips it on you, or it hits you like to one area of the timeline and you're kind of like learning something new or kind of feeling like you have an idea of like, oh, so this is what happened or this caused this, and then
Hmm.
maybe that turns out to be true, but maybe it's something else. So I thought that was just a really good way of, and again, even in the editing, even in the way that, and in the script, of course, the writing, I think it plays out like a tennis match. Like it's just kind of like banging back and forth between these different perspectives and different characters. Like it's just really, really well done. And I think Luca Guadagnino, I am a fan of his, I think, at this point, after seeing Challengers. I've been a little bit lukewarm on some of what I've seen from him. I didn't think Bones and All was like especially great. I thought I enjoyed it for what it was. I saw Call Me by Your Name years ago, thought it was again pretty great, but didn't love it. Suspiria, I liked a little bit more. But this is the first movie where I've like really like been impressed, and like I feel like his
Hmm.
personality, his taste and vision are just so clear throughout and really
That's
make it what it
That's
is.
one of the questions I was going to ask you because I've only seen Bones and All and now this. So I only had those two movies to go off of. And I somehow have not seen Call Me by Your Name still. But it's interesting to hear you say that because I thought you were maybe more of a bigger fan of Call Me by Your Name. But no, I definitely like this one more than Bones and All, just
For sure,
like
yeah.
across the board. And so I'm curious to just like once I go back and watch Call Me by Your Name, see how that kind of informs this movie and how much I like that.
Yeah, I mean the thing is with him is he has, I think maybe more than any other director really, and I don't know if you haven't seen Suspiria, I
No.
would assume. And I think Suspiria I think is legit great. And he just has like across all the films I've seen of his anyway, like the way he approaches like sensuality, and he just has a very like interesting point of view and like perspective when it comes to relationships and just like intimacy. Like I don't know of like another director necessarily that approaches it like at least in the same way he does. um and a lot about like the human body, and like in Suspiria like they're dancers and there's like a traumatic angle to that as well. And then of course in Bones and All there's the cannibalism element of that film. And then in Call Me by Your Name, like it's not just okay, these two people are in love and having sex or what have you. Like there's just another layer of sensuality there. And I think it all kind of peaks for me in this movie. Like I feel like this is like kind of what I was getting at, like the perfect storm in terms of story and the performers. Like I think these three actors are all really strong in this movie and play off each other really well. When you have that level of chemistry, like it just elevates the whole thing. Not to say that his other films don't have that level of chemistry. I think they do, but here when you have that the tennis element of it, and then you're also tying that into this okay friendship quote unquote, and then this marriage quote unquote, and then like the interplay between all three of those, like it's just it really it pleasantly surprised me in terms of like how much I thought Guadagnino, he is definitely, he has a lane as like an art house like filmmaker, but I wouldn't describe this movie as like an art house movie. Like this is commercial, has a lot of product placement in it, which I found actually like kind of appropriate and like almost endearing in certain ways. Um, and like is very entertaining, it's funny, it's just like it's very cool to see him like approach this. And this is like not a cheap movie. I mean, this is like a 40 or $50 million production, I think. Much higher budget than I think any of his prior films. Or maybe on par with at least Suspiria. So to see him get this kind of canvas to really have fun and like play with like the editing and like the cinematography and the of course the sound is fantastic, the score is fantastic, which I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit more, but I think it just really made me appreciate him even more as like an artist, like getting to see this story play out the way it did. And just to make a movie like a tennis movie, quote unquote, this engaging, like this exciting and really sexy without being like I don't think there's an actual sex scene in this movie that we like see play out in full. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's it's really just the kind of foreplay and like after and like everything in between. And even like the non-sexual scenes have more like sensuality than most sex scenes do, probably in other films or shows. Nowadays.
For sure. It's tense, man. What's your thinking of the trio, I guess, as we're like Zendaya is the star of this movie, but not necessarily the best actress. I think like I think you could make a case for any of them. But I know Josh O'Connor has gotten a ton of love as
Yeah.
Patrick. Curious, what's your power ranking here in the characters in the performances?
That's tough. And this was something I knew that I would be curious to hear your thoughts on more. Um, Damn.
I
I would
think
say,
I've got to go Josh, Zendaya, Mike, but it's all like
yeah.
I
I
think
think
it's also like very dependent on the material itself.
yeah.
Um, where like we said, Mike Feist's character is like the one that's kind of like putting up with stuff and like more passive versus like so obviously that's not going to have as much like scene stealing material as like the kind of home wrecker coming in later down the line in and Patrick's or in Josh's character.
Yeah.
Um, and then like Zendaya is just at the scene of the crime the entire way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with your ranking. And it definitely comes down to like the characters and like the material. They're all great, but Josh O'Connor, I mean, he's probably the best actor out of the three, just in general. Like I think he's fantastic and he has a lot to play with here. Yeah, he really like kind of oscillates between these different kind of uh I don't even know what the word is. Like his attitude throughout the movie towards certain characters or like in certain moments, like it's really interesting. I think there's a lot more going on like under the surface. Like there's quite a bit of nuance in his performance compared to maybe the other two. And also he has like his own kind of story in this movie. In terms of like we were talking in the group chat with perspective, like his perspective is like really one of two in the movie. Obviously, Mike Feist's character, Art, he of course he's his own person, but in the terms of this movie, he's really kind of playing only off of what he is being given from either Patrick or Tashi. And so you have him kind of stuck between these two different people at any given time. And he is kind of like he's just like a dog. Like he's unfortunately like he's beaten and like
Mm-hmm.
bruised and he'll come like still like lay down on your lap. Like he's just like he's sad to watch. And he's great. He's just so when I like when he's on screen, like I can't take my eyes off him. Like he's just a very magnetic performer. But you just kind of feel like he has, I guess, maybe a little bit more of like the emotional element to it. Particularly like there's a moment towards the end of the movie where he doesn't say anything. I don't think you even see his face, but there's a shot and like a moment where like you're like, damn, like he just feeling him as a person, like this character, you really kind of empathize with him, or at least sympathize with him. And so I thought that was really great. But Zendaya, I think again, she has a little bit more meat on the bone in terms of what she does. This was definitely, I think, in film, her best performance so far.
Mm-hmm.
She plays a character we don't get we don't really see like their lives in full. You kind of get bits and pieces of their lives outside of this story that we're getting. And so I think that's an interesting choice. I appreciate it because I think it's not biting off more than it can chew, and it leaves things to like your imagination, which I think helps. Um, but she's a person that you, I don't know. I don't want to say she's unlikable, but she's a person like it's hard to understand, and she's very frustrating at times with her decisions and the way that she treats people sometimes.
It's
And you can
like
say about the other characters as well. I'm not limiting that just to Tashi. I think you could say this about Patrick, especially, and Art as well, even. But um, definitely complex characters, I think is safe to say, even if you don't see their lives like in totality.
for sure. And it's interesting because like looking at this from like a gender angle, that to see like Tashi being this character, this like athlete that is like their whole life is like dedicated to this sport, and then it's taken away from them and they become like this like soul focused, like honed in on success and winning and victory and like doing whatever it takes. That like it's interesting to see that from like a female perspective versus like I feel like so frequently that that's like the male perspective of like what a sports movie is or something like that.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
so to like flip the script on that was so smart, and seeing like, okay, what is it like when the the woman is the calculating athlete that will do like whatever it takes and is not like taking a backseat to the male athlete or something, but instead she's going to be the one that's like gonna do whatever she can to win, or even if it's like not like herself winning but making her husband on her behalf, like because that's like once she gets the game taken away from her, it becomes like, okay, I'm still able to achieve success through my husband. And so when she sees that he is not able to like have the same drive and desire for victory that she has, like it is a poor reflection on her, in her opinion.
Yeah.
And that's like what drives this relationship with Patrick. But no, I just thought that was very smart to kind of flip the script. And it's like the classic, like, oh, well, you wouldn't be saying that she's unlikable if it was a man that was doing this or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, gender, I guess you could say, or just like that dynamic that we see in sports or just in life in general, I think is an element of this. I mean, there's just so many different things that when I watch the movie again, I'm going to be like trying to key in on or like think a little bit more like in depth about. But it's definitely a good point. And I think, um, you know, even with the scene where they kind of the three of them come together in the room earlier in the movie, which is like the famous scene from like the trailers, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just hearing them talk about like their life experience and kind of like you really get an idea of like the way they think and like just the dynamic, whether it's between Patrick and Art, or like the way Zendaya is like thinking about her life in like the grander like scheme of things, um, outside of just sports, for example. Um, it's man, it was just really like it kind of reminded me. I'm sure the score probably had something to do with it from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
Mm-hmm.
One of, if not their best score.
Banger.
It's fantastic. I was absolutely going ape shit at the gym today listening to it. Um, and I like that we got kind of like two different versions of it. I think that's awesome. But it's almost like the approach to this is so it's methodical. Like it feels very precise from Guadagnino, like the editing and everything. But it also has like I said this online earlier. It has like it's like an expressionist like piece of art, I feel like it's just very much going for like this like very sensory kind of feeling. And I feel like you in terms of perspective, like you really get a strong sense of like these people, with the way that I mean the blocking in this movie is outstanding. The shot, compositions, the way that they move the camera during certain scenes. Especially I mean, I'm just thinking about the opening, like the way we get like these kind of like close-ups or like these kind of like insert shots, and then the way the camera kind of reveals and like pushes in on Tashi. Um, there's just so much fun. What I was getting at is it kind of reminds me almost of like a David Fincher film in some ways. Um, like just the level of like precision and like in terms of camera movement and editing and everything. I think it's that clean and it's that kind
Mm-hmm.
of focused, but it's also with Guadagnino, like he allows for like this expression through color or certain uses, like there's like split diopter like shots going on. Like it's just really fun like filmmaking. It that also kind of reminds you of like the 70s, for example. Like De Palma, I know, is like someone that people have mentioned as like an inspiration. I think that's like pretty clear. Even though De Palma is like really, I don't think there's any movie necessarily you would point to of his that is like this. I think that it's just something I can't think of another movie. I don't know if you have one off the top of your head, but like I can't think of another movie I would make a direct comparison to. Like there are filmmakers that come to mind, like I just mentioned, but I can't think of another movie that really lines up with this approach. Past Lives, obviously, in terms of just the like love triangle.
Thematically, yeah.
But we've seen love triangles in other movies, and I just don't think, in terms of the form and meeting the themes and the characters and everything, the writing, I think that this is kind of a unique film, at least in just my recent memory.
Yeah, I
that's
agree.
part of why it struck me so strongly um, in the theater. I think it's just a really overwhelming sensory kind of experience that I really I'm glad it's getting like a Dolby release. It's in IMAX theaters. I think that's really cool that a mid-budget drama essentially with no quote unquote action
Yeah,
is getting that kind of presentation because it certainly deserves it.
agreed. To get spoilery for a second, I want to talk about the ending. Um,
Oh boy.
First of all, love like I saw it coming and still loved it, but the whole position
The
of
signal.
the ball on the serve, the signal, um, like the second after they hooked up in the car and like it was clear that like this showdown was coming, I was like, yep, we're getting the throwback to that. But what do you make of the ending as a whole? Because like this was my dilemma watching this movie is that the screening was on Monday night of the national championship basketball game. And
That's
so
right.
the screening was at 7. The movie ended at like 9:10. And then I rushed home and watched
Yeah.
the national championship that started at like 9:15. So I was just like thinking about this nonstop, like obviously like wrote a review for the website and was like processing it, but didn't like immediately following the movie. It wasn't like, let me sit and like gather my thoughts about all of the things that I just witnessed.
Yeah.
So another reason why I probably should go see this again. But just like I remember like Rebecca went and saw this with me and was like, we were both like just trying to process the final like what happened in the tennis match, them jumping over the net into each other. Like, is this now like, oh, they've realized that like Tashi was pitting them against each other and now like they're gonna reunite and rekindle their friendship, or like what's like how do you see like the immediate aftermath of that match? Like what do you think happens next?
It's a good question. You know, I haven't thought about the ending as much, which I know, I mean, it's an amazing ending, obviously. There is like an indication that there may be like a potential future there, like with Patrick and Art. Like I don't know on what level that looks like, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
As friends, as like some, like polygamous like relationship potentially. Like who knows? But it seemed like they maybe are just going to reconcile, but like that may be like the extent of it. You know what I mean? Like in my mind, just I guess I would see them like coming to terms with like what they've gone through, like what's happened to them, and being able to, I guess, walk away and like take that for what it is. But it is interesting because I've seen people point out like she says that she needs Art to win. Like she's saying that he needs to win. Now, is that for her own selfish reasons, or is it because she cares about him and wants him to feel like he can be confident, like that he has like been successful, that he has like potential to continue on, or is it just because she needs to live vicariously through him? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for me, my interpretation was like more of the latter, like her living vicariously and also like her obsession with success, that like not even her living vicariously, but her being associated with someone who has like lost their game. Because it wasn't even like even just like the prospect of him retiring was still like, oh, that's like upsetting her and could be like a deal breaker in their relationship. And it's like he's not gonna be able to play forever. So I guess like the only way that she would be okay with it is if he like retires on top, like as a champion. But even after like all of these grand slams and victories, like it's still not enough.
Mm.
So I'm seeing her agree to take on Patrick, have him like push throughout and like continue his career perhaps. I don't know. It's just and then you throw in the daughter, and it's just like, man, this is so messy. Of like,
It is.
you can't just like let tennis upset your entire life when you have a daughter together and like leave because your husband wants to retire. Like, yeah, it's a mess.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think it's a good point, and yeah, the daughter thing, it's I mean, it's fucked. Like there's it's such a toxic relationship like dynamic that they have. Yeah, like I want to believe that they're gonna be able to come out of it somehow, but like I think there's really no reason to believe that Tashi's going to like change or that she's going to
Mm-hmm.
put art maybe like first in some way, like for lack of a better term. Like it just seems, as you said, she is like trying to live vicariously like through him, that she's focused on success and like, maybe remaining relevant, things like that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Do you
It's
see
interesting too, because like thinking of like what comes next for Art, of like finding
yeah.
out that his wife has cheated on him. Not, I'm sure it would come up at some point, like because he didn't know about the, or
Well,
I guess
presumably,
he maybe knew about like the previous time, but then like definitely was confirmed about like this most recent one with the signal.
yes. Yeah. So
But
he knows.
yeah, he knows for sure. I guess he doesn't know that it happened twice, maybe. But thinking back to like them initially when they're in that hotel scene when they're like first meeting, and I feel like they're just so different that like he was saying like Josh had a or sorry, Patrick had a girlfriend, and like Patrick was denying it. So it's just kind of like sketchy about like how Patrick operates, of like maybe he was in a relationship, maybe he's like, oh, but this is my chance with like Tashi Duncan. So like it seemed like Art was much more like upstanding, and like that something like a betrayal like that would bother him significantly more than
Oh, of
Patrick.
course. Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of like a happy world where, okay, Art's gonna retire and be happy, and Tashi's gonna get to coach Patrick and be happy, and Patrick and Art are gonna reunite because they've like come together and realized that like their friendship was broken apart by Todd. But it's just like I think it's far too messy for any way that Art and Tashi would stay together. So like maybe they'll all be like connected through tennis still in this weird like semi love triangle, but who knows?
Yeah, no, that's valid. I think, yeah, I could see an outcome where maybe I don't know. I mean, he does lose the match though, right? So Patrick loses, and I mean, where does he go from there? Like professionally? Like that's why I think almost like it's like a reconciliation like in the moment, but I feel like I don't know. I don't know if I see Art breaking free from Tashi though. I think that's my biggest thing. I think it's I don't know. It kind of reminds me of I thought about this like several times. I think there's like in my brain, it reminds me of like Succession almost, like
Mm-hmm.
especially the Tom and Shiv dynamic, obviously. Um, but I don't know. Like I just don't see when you're in that situation, I feel like it's hard to like imagine, that you can go and do something different. Obviously, Art wanted to retire, so he's already thinking about that like professionally. But in terms of like marriage and like relationship, I mean, he knows that his
And
wife
a
cheated.
child.
Yeah. I mean, he knows that his wife already cheated on him. So I just don't know if that's like it happening even again would make a difference to him. You know what I mean? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that I think it's really interesting. I mean, there's definitely ambiguity, and I love that about the ending. I think it's a really great, and then just the energy. I mean, the 15 or 20 minutes like preceding the final shot, like it's just a great uh climax, not to like be too tongue in cheek, but like I think it's just a great kind of way for it to resolve, but also not really resolve and just kind of leave it up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe seeing it again, I'll have getting more thoughts on the characters and how the story is ultimately kind of structured. Maybe I'll have a different feeling, but I don't know. I don't know if I see him leaving, and I don't know if I see with Patrick going out like the way he does. I don't know if what the point would be of them. maintaining like a real friendship, or like him being more involved, I guess, with Art or Tashi potentially.
Oh, it's a doozy, man.
It is
I
a
think
fucking
over the course of this discussion, it's convinced me that I definitely want to and need to see this again, just
absolutely.
to see how it changes for me.
Definitely. I recommend anyone to go see it. I mean, I think it's just a really excellent, time at the movies, and it's good cinema. So go check it out. And especially if you can catch it in Dolby or IMAX before, like I said, before it leaves for the Fall Guy this week, I think. Because it's, yeah, sound. And I don't know in terms of like people were talking about this online, because it's like an Amazon movie because it's through MGM.
Mhm.
Not really sure what we're gonna get in terms like of a physical release. I mean, of course, it'll be streaming in quote unquote 4K, quote unquote HDR, but yeah, may not be able to see it as well. I would love, I mean, if they dropped even just a 4K or I guess a Blu-ray, I would definitely go for that. But that
I'm trying to
remains to be.
think what else are Amazon MGM movies to see if there's a
Yeah,
track record of
I'm not sure if there's anything I can think of off the top of my head that actually has been physically released.
list of Amazon MGM. Let's see. Um, Air. Did Air get a physical release?
Ah, I don't think so. Maybe, well, no, I don't think so, actually.
Saltburn did. That was
Okay. May have something. I think Manchester by the Sea did.
American Fiction is getting a physical release.
Okay. So there's hope.
So
What you're
there's
saying.
hope. Yeah.
Okay. I'll hold my breath and because I would love. I mean, this is just such a again, this is a movie that I think I could revisit for sure. Um, I've been thinking about nonstop since I saw it yesterday. So definitely worth your time.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it. Challengers, 2 thumbs up from both of us. Go see it, check it out, rewatch it. Let us know your thoughts. But thank you for tuning in week in and week out. We appreciate the support and would not be able to do it without any of you all.
Absolutely. Really appreciate you tuning in once again. Great discussion, great movie. And definitely more to come, hopefully, in the near future. Like we said at the top of the show, lots of big movies and then, some big series through the summer as well. So it's going to be an exciting time. Glad we got to kind of get back together here. And of course, stay up to date with all that. Stay tuned in. Follow us on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. You can find all those pages at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeart, YouTube, anywhere you can find a podcast. We are there. And be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, The Rewind, so you can get everything delivered straight to your inbox. And come back next week. We will be talking The Fall Guy. We'll see you then.